A few years ago, I worked in the sewers as a sanitation technician. My job was to maintain the various structures inside the Paris sewers to ensure they worked properly, and thus avoid any risk of collapse, flooding, or any problems that could result from poor maintenance. If I stopped doing this job, it's for a very simple reason. One summer afternoon, while I was doing routine work in the sewers of Paris, I saw a monstrous creature that I can no longer forget. The day started out pretty normally. I was in charge of checking the watertightness of an entire network gallery. I was used to doing that, the kind of inspection that was nothing out of the ordinary. I just remember that afternoon, in particular, there were even more rats than usual. I heard them moving in small groups nearby, their high-pitched squeaks echoing through the tunnels I passed. Since I often worked alone, I was rarely affected by fear. Those kinds of things were just insignificant details to me, and I didn't believe in bad omens or even less in the paranormal. This clearly put me at a disadvantage at the time. While I was inspecting the walls of one of the tunnels, I heard something mixing with the cries of the rodents. It was like some kind of laughter. Worse still, the laughter seemed to be coming from the same place where all the rats were. I aimed my flashlight where I thought I heard it. At the very end of the tunnel I was working on, I saw a multitude of shining eyes and tiny little figures scattering. As the beam passed over them, about 10 rats huddled at the back, appearing curious, watching me discreetly from the shadows. Only something else was among them. I couldn't see clearly since my flashlight beam didn't reach the tunnel's end. But there was clearly a figure among the rats, almost on the ground. So I squinted to try to see what they could be. I slowly approached, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me, which wasn't surprising when you're used to working in the darkness. Nevertheless, the closer I got, the more I realized that it was something very real. The figure appeared to hide among the rats, and behind a wall leading to the tunnel on the left. I could see 2 small eyes, just as bright as those of the rats, at the same height as them, barely above the ground. I then said a sentence. The one that triggered all the traumatic events I experienced afterwards. I probably should have turned back and gone home at that moment. And instead of that, I said, "There's someone." All the rats scattered at the same time. They went in every direction, so I realized 2 things. At that moment, there were around 30 rats, not just 10, all tightly clustered in that spot. The second thing I noticed was the pale-skinned child, who was standing right in front of me, crouched on the ground like a giant spider. Now I knew what the figure hiding among the rats was. I almost dropped my flashlight. If I had listened to myself, as I should have, I would have immediately run the other way. Instead of that, my rational side took over. It was entirely possible that this child was lost after playing in the sewers, or that he came from a homeless family looking for shelter from the sun. So naturally I tried to understand what this child was doing there. "Hey kid, what are you doing here? Where is your family?" As soon as I said that, I noticed several details that terrified me more and more as I discovered them. First, the child was completely still. To make the most accurate comparison, it looked like a wax statue, like the ones you would see in the Grevin Museum. I even caught myself thinking that it was entirely possible, naturally. So I looked at his belly, which was touching the wet floor of the tunnel, to check something. I felt my flashlight trembling in my hands. When I noticed that his belly wasn't moving, the child wasn't breathing. The second detail I noticed was that some rats didn't leave their spot, as if they were the bravest among them. They stared me in the eyes, on guard, as if to protect the child. And the third and last detail that I noticed, the one that terrified me the most, was that the child's eyes followed me when I moved. So this information started swirling around in my head, creating a mental fog that was impossible to clear. The child was very real, since his eyes followed me precisely. But whatever that thing was, it wasn't breathing. My flashlight beam grew less precise as my quick, erratic movements intensified. I was shaking like a leaf at that moment. The silence in the tunnel felt even heavier than usual. And this time, there wasn't the slightest sound in Mandra. It was as if they had all stopped at the same time to watch my every move, so I instinctively took a step back. And what happened next? Continue in your own words. Up until then, the child's left arm, with a disgusting crack that echoed throughout the tunnel, perfectly followed my movement. As I was stepping back, he was moving forward, as if the child was mirroring my movements with perfect timing. Now my legs had also started to tremble. The child, on the other hand, had completely stopped moving. I was in a stalemate, with every move I made mirrored by him. The speed at which he had moved his arm made me realize something horrible. He was quick, with a supernatural speed, even when moving along the ground. I was certain that if he wanted to, he could catch up to me without any trouble. Fortunately, the exit ladder was only a few meters behind me. I had to try something then, but before that, I wanted to assess my chances, so I took another step back. The crack that followed made me realize that he had actually moved, because he was so fast that I couldn't even see if that was the case. I could hear my heart beating in my ears when I noticed that his right leg had moved closer to his head. Like a contortionist, he had positioned himself in a peculiar way. His arms were bent, and his legs seemed to be in exactly the same position. His eyes kept staring intensely into mine, like a hunter ready to pounce on his prey. Tons of questions raced through my mind. Could he jump all the way to me? Why is he copying my movements? Is something keeping him from coming toward me? And as if to answer my last question, my flashlight started flickering for a moment. The universal sign that it was time to recharge it. What happened next lasted just over a second, maybe 2 at most. Yet without a doubt, those were the 2 most intense and terrifying seconds of my entire life. When the flashlight started flickering, plunging the tunnels into perfect darkness, many cracking sounds echoed, followed by guttural noises. Impossible to describe to you perfectly, except that it was a subtle mix between a wet sound and a child's scream. The moment the light stopped acting up, it had changed places. It was now standing only a few meters away from me, paralyzed by fear. I hadn't moved an inch. Fortunately, actually, if I had made the mistake of turning my back on it, I don't think I'd be here to tell you about this event. I could now see more details about the child, which made me realize that it was only a child in appearance. Its whole head was trembling strangely. Its mouth was half open, filled with black sharp teeth, and drool was dripping from its mouth, and it dripped onto the wet floor. Its eyes truly shone, like animals or the many rats that also watched it. This creature was anything but a child, I had no doubt about it. Facing a real demon, terrified and feeling doomed, I then made the most drastic decision of my life. The distance between me and the creature was almost exactly the same as the distance between me and the ladder. So I did something, a gesture that perfectly summed up the distress I was in. I set the flashlight on the ground, facing the creature, on a dry part of the tunnel. The thing hadn't moved this time. Apparently it only did so if I moved forward or backward from my position. Once I did that, I took a deep breath and ran as fast as I could to the ladder. I immediately realized that pointing the flashlight at it had been a good idea. A quick glance behind me showed its movements were more jerky and imprecise. But above all, it had moved much more slowly than in total darkness. This run was very short, but one of the most intense I have ever experienced in my entire life. The creature eventually reached the position of the flashlight, and I heard it crash against a wall, right next to me. When I was finally able to get my hands on the ladder, I grabbed it and started climbing up without waiting another second. A cold, firm hand grabbed my ankle, and I had to fight with my other foot to kick the creature that was pulling me toward it. Its strength was incredible, which confirmed once again that this thing was nothing like a child. I saw its face up close, and its eyes looked even more terrifying. Its eyes were wide, staring at me with wild hunger. Its drool spread everywhere, foaming in spots. This creature clearly wanted only one thing. It wanted to feed. I had become its prey. My other foot finally hit part of its face, and the creature crashed to the ground with an unbearable cracking sound. Its terrible scream echoed all around me as I hurried to climb the rest of the ladder, using all the strength I had left. And when I finally reached the level of the hatch, I saw that the creature had already gotten back up. And even worse, it was also climbing the ladder. Its speed was much greater than mine, so I climbed even faster, exhausted by fear and surprise. I used all my strength to push the heavy manhole cover separating me from the real world. When it finally moved, a blinding light dazzled me as the sun bathed me in its reassuring warmth. The creature screamed one last time and let itself fall from the ladder. When I looked down to find it, it had already vanished. So I climbed back up without looking back and almost threw myself onto the concrete of the Parisian streets. I don't know exactly how long I stayed there, looking at the sky, my back against the ground. All I can tell you is that after that, I took a shower, and I spent the rest of my day watching through my window, a knife in my right hand, the phone in my left. Discussing it with others would have made no sense. The police would probably have laughed at me, and as for my colleagues, they would never have believed me, and at that rate, I probably would have ended up in a psychiatric hospital. The only thing I can do is tell it here, without fear of being judged. Saying all this lifts a weight I've carried for 2 long years. Moreover, the fact that you know everything that happened to me will help you protect yourself better, because now you're aware of what hides in the shadows. Monsters and other creatures that are likely to exist, unknown to the vast majority of people on this planet. Tell yourself that this thing was just one of them. Who knows how many other monsters are hiding in our world? Monsters are hiding in our world.